She grew up in a small town where life moved slowly and people knew each other by face and by heart. Every morning, the sun would peek through the dusty windows of her small room, casting gentle light on a worn-out wooden chair and an old instrument that sat quietly in the corner. It was nothing fancy, just a simple instrument that had seen better days, but to her, it was priceless. From the moment she could remember, music had always been part of her life. She would hum little tunes while brushing her hair, tap out rhythms on the table while eating breakfast, or close her eyes and let her fingers wander over the strings or keys, creating sounds that felt alive and free. Her family lived modestly, and though they were supportive in their quiet way, they didn't fully understand her love for music. They saw it as a hobby, something pretty but not practical. She often felt a twinge of sadness when they would shrug off her enthusiasm. Still, she never let that dim her love for the melodies she carried inside. She spent hours each day practicing alone, sometimes losing track of time entirely, the world outside fading into the background. The neighbors might hear faint tunes drifting through the windows, and occasionally, someone would pause in the street to listen. They would smile, nod, or whisper to one another. But they never knew the depth of feeling she poured into every note. She wasn't the kind to seek attention. Her friends knew her as quiet, gentle, and thoughtful. They often saw her sitting on the edge of the playground or under the old oak tree in the park, strumming her instrument softly, eyes closed, lost in a world that belonged only to her. To them, it seemed magical how she could turn nothing into something that felt real and alive. Even in school, when other children rushed to speak in class or show off talents, she preferred to stay in the background, listening, observing, and occasionally letting a soft hum escape her lips. Every day was a routine, but her music made it feel like a small adventure. She found rhythm in the patter of rain on the roof, in the way the wind stirred the branches outside her window, and in the laughter of children playing in the distance. Simple things inspired her most: a bird's song in the morning, the sound of feet on cobblestones, the way light bounced off a puddle. She learned to notice the world deeply because she understood that even the smallest sounds could carry emotion. At school, she wasn't the top student academically, but she had a keen sense of observation and creativity. Teachers occasionally asked her to play for small gatherings or to provide music for events, but she always felt too shy to accept. She didn't play for recognition or praise. She played because it made her heart feel lighter, because the notes spoke words she couldn't always say. Her notebooks were filled with tiny sketches of music notes, doodles that flowed along with scribbled lyrics or ideas for melodies. She treasured these private creations, never intending to show them to anyone, despite her quiet nature. There were moments when her talent would shine through unintentionally. During lunchtime, she might hum a tune that caught the attention of others, or absent-mindedly strum a rhythm that would linger in people's minds. Friends began to notice that when she played, there was a certain calm that spread across the room. Even those who didn't particularly care for music found themselves listening. Captivated by the authenticity and the sincerity in her sounds, she never pushed herself forward. She simply let her music emerge naturally, and it had a strange, quiet power. Her home life was simple, but filled with small acts of love. Her mother would cook humble meals while humming softly, a tune that somehow always reminded her daughter of the connection between heart and music. Her father, quiet and practical, often watched her with a mixture of pride and confusion, unsure why she spent so much time on an old instrument that brought no material reward. Yet, whenever he heard her play, even in the middle of mundane chores, he felt something unspoken, a sense of beauty and possibility he couldn't put into words. There were nights when she would sneak out to the small garden behind the house. She loved the way the moonlight touched the earth, the quiet hum of crickets, and the cool breeze that made her hair sway. Sitting there, instrument in hand, she would play melodies that seemed to echo the night itself. Sometimes she imagined an audience of invisible listeners, faces she had never seen, but who were connected to her music in some unexplainable way. The thought made her heart flutter, and she allowed herself a secret wish that one day someone, somewhere, might hear her tune and feel the way she felt when she played. She had a small circle of friends who knew about her passion. They were the ones who would sometimes sit with her in the park as she played, or help her carry the instrument when she moved from place to place. They never pressured her to perform publicly, but their quiet encouragement made her feel safe. Like her music wasn't just hers alone, but could be shared in small, comforting ways. Their reactions, smiles, quiet applause, or a soft word of praise fueled her confidence slowly, almost imperceptibly. One day, while wandering through the local market, she found an old sheet of music tucked away in a dusty corner of a second-hand shop. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the melody was simple and pure. She bought it for a few coins, feeling an unexpected thrill. That evening, she sat by the window, candle flickering, and began to play. The tune was not her own, but she made it her own through small touches, soft variations, and gentle emotion. By the time she finished, she realized her heart was beating faster, not from nerves, but from joy. She felt a connection to something larger than herself, as if the music had always been waiting for her to find it. Days passed, and she continued to practice, humming quietly as she moved through life. Her talent remained a gentle secret, shared only in small moments with those she trusted. Yet each day, she felt a quiet yearning, a whisper inside that maybe, just maybe, her music could reach beyond the small streets of her town. The idea was frightening and exciting at the same time. She imagined faces she had never met, people who might stop and listen, who might feel something she could not describe with words alone. The thought filled her with both hope and fear. Despite the uncertainty, she didn't rush or force herself. She understood that music, like life, needed time to grow and breathe. Every note she played, every melody she imagined, became a step in a journey she did not yet fully understand. She carried her instrument everywhere, not for show, but as a companion. It was as natural as carrying a book, a piece of herself that would always be ready when inspiration struck. In the evenings, she would sometimes walk through quiet streets, the sounds of the town fading behind her, and allow herself to play freely. Sometimes a passerby would pause, surprised by the beauty of a simple tune. Other times, no one noticed at all, and that was fine too. She knew that music's value was not in recognition, but in the connection it created, however small or unseen. Each note was a conversation, a gentle reaching out to the world. And she began to understand that her music was already extraordinary. Even if no one else knew it yet, her life moved in this quiet rhythm of practice, observation, and small joys. She learned to notice the beauty in ordinary moments, a child's laughter, the rustle of leaves, the subtle shifts of light across a wall. These things became part of her music, shaping the melodies she carried in her heart. Though she did not seek an audience, she knew deep inside that one day, her tunes might escape the walls of her small room and touch lives beyond her own. And so, she lived, a young woman with an old instrument, a heart full of melodies, and a quiet determination to let her music be heard, even if only in the softest whispers for now. Each day she added new notes to the invisible song of her life, unaware that the world might one day pause to listen, captivated by the simple tunes that carried the extraordinary moments of her heart. She was not yet ready to perform for strangers, but the seeds of courage and possibility were planted, quietly growing. Waiting for the right moment to bloom, the small town was buzzing quietly with anticipation one afternoon, though most of the people did not know why. Word had spread about a local gathering, a modest celebration organized by the community center. It was the kind of event where neighbors shared food, children ran around laughing, and someone always found a way to entertain the crowd. She had heard about it only by chance, walking past the center while returning from the market. A simple sign had caught her eye: Community Talent Showcase. All welcome. Her heart skipped a beat. She had never performed for anyone outside her small circle of friends and family. The thought made her both nervous and curious. She walked past the sign several times that week, unable to shake the feeling that something important might be happening. Every time she thought about it, she felt a mix of fear and excitement, the kind that made her fingers tingle as if they already knew the melodies that could be played. She had always imagined performing in her mind, but the idea of actually standing in front of strangers was far different. She could feel the weight of their eyes even before she met them. Yet there was a quiet whisper inside, a gentle nudge telling her that perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for. Her friends noticed the change in her mood. She had become more thoughtful, sometimes staring off into space with a faraway look in her eyes. One afternoon, while sitting together in the park, one friend finally asked, "Are you thinking about performing?" She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Her voice was soft but firm when she admitted, "Maybe. I don't know if I can. But I can't stop thinking about it either." They smiled, understanding the struggle between fear and desire. They encouraged her gently, saying, "You don't have to be perfect. Just play because it makes you happy. That's all anyone really wants to see." Those words settled in her mind, offering a strange comfort. As the day of the event approached, she practiced more than ever. Every evening, she would sit by the window, candlelight flickering, and play the simple tune she had discovered weeks ago. She added small variations, letting her fingers explore, creating layers of sound that felt like a conversation between her heart and the instrument. Sometimes she played too softly, almost afraid of her own courage. Other times, she played with a boldness that surprised even her. The music became a mirror of her emotions: hope, fear, excitement, and anticipation, all woven together in quiet melodies. Her family noticed her concentration. Her mother, who had always hummed while working in the kitchen, watched silently from the doorway. She understood that something had shifted in her daughter, though she could not put it into words. Her father, who usually remained distant from her musical world, finally approached her one evening. "If you feel ready, you should try," he said simply. His voice carried a weight of seriousness and pride that made her heart swell. She realized then that her love for music was not just a private joy. It had a power that could touch even those who didn't understand it fully. On the morning of the showcase, she woke earlier than usual. The sun had just begun to rise, casting a warm glow over the quiet streets. She packed her instrument carefully, almost reverently, as if it were a fragile treasure. Her hands trembled slightly, but the tremble was not from fear alone. It was from the mixture of excitement and anticipation that made her feel alive. She walked slowly to the community center, feeling each step as if it were part of a larger rhythm. When she arrived, the room was bustling with people, setting up tables, arranging chairs, and preparing decorations. Children ran in circles, their laughter echoing through the hall. Other participants were warming up, tuning instruments, or practicing lines for small skits. She found a quiet corner, away from the noise, and began to play softly. The notes were tentative at first, like the gentle stretching of muscles before a run. Slowly, confidence crept in, and her tune grew clearer and steadier. Some people passing by paused for a moment, noticing the melody and smiling. Even in the midst of chaos, her music created a small pocket of calm. The organizer, an older woman with kind eyes and a warm smile, approached her. "Are you ready to perform?" she asked. She nodded, swallowing her nervousness. "Take your time. Just play when you feel it's right," the woman said. Those words gave her permission not to be perfect, to simply be herself. She understood that the showcase was not about impressing anyone. It was about sharing a piece of her soul. That thought was freeing, and she held it close as she waited for her turn. When her name was called, she felt a rush of adrenaline. The room quieted down as she walked to the front, instrument in hand. The bright lights made her squint slightly, and she could feel dozens of eyes on her. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had practiced for this moment, that she was ready. Her fingers touched the strings, and the first note escaped, soft and cautious. The audience leaned in unconsciously, drawn to the purity of the sound. With each passing moment, she became more immersed, the music flowing through her like a river finding its course. As she played, she noticed the faces in the crowd. Some were smiling gently, some closed their eyes as if listening to a memory brought back by the melody, and others simply stared in quiet wonder. She had never imagined that music could hold so many different reactions at once. For the first time, she realized that her private joy had a ripple effect. The notes she created in solitude could reach others in ways she had never known. It was a revelation that filled her heart with warmth and a strange, thrilling pride. The simple tune she played was no longer just a string of notes. It carried her emotions, her hopes, and the quiet dreams she had held for so long. Each variation, each subtle change in tempo or volume, was a conversation between her and the audience, even if they did not speak aloud. She felt a connection that transcended words, a moment where the boundaries between performer and listener dissolved. The room was silent except for the music, and in that silence, she found a strange sense of freedom. Fear melted into focus, and hesitation transformed into expression. As the final note lingered in the air, a hush followed, like the world itself was holding its breath. Then, slowly, gentle applause began to ripple through the room. It was not loud or overwhelming, but it was sincere, a quiet acknowledgement of the gift she had shared. She looked up, surprised at the intensity of the attention. Some people were smiling broadly, others nodded, some even had tears glistening in their eyes. She had not expected such a response, and it filled her with a mix of disbelief and quiet joy. She realized that the music she had always treasured privately could indeed touch hearts outside her small circle. After the performance, several people approached her to compliment her playing. They spoke softly, afraid perhaps of breaking the delicate magic she had created. One elderly man who had been sitting quietly at the back told her, "Your music reminds us of the simple joys we often forget. Thank you for sharing it." Those words stayed with her long after she left the community center. She understood that her talent was not just about skill or practice. It was about sincerity, about putting a piece of her heart into something that could resonate with others. That evening, walking home under the warm glow of streetlights, she felt a new sense of possibility. The day had been more than a small performance. It had been a step into a larger world, one where her music could exist beyond the confines of her room. She thought about all the moments she had spent alone, crafting melodies, and realized that every note had led her here. The nervousness, the doubt, the quiet practice in secret, all of it had shaped her, prepared her for this extraordinary experience. At home, she carefully placed her instrument in its corner. But this time, it did not feel like a mere object. It was a companion, a witness to her courage, and a vessel for her emotions. She sat for a long time, replaying the performance in her mind, noticing the faces, the reactions, and the way the music had flowed through her. For the first time, she truly felt the power of what she could create, not for recognition or reward, but for the shared human experience that music could offer. The following days were filled with quiet reflection. Friends continued to ask her about the performance, and she smiled, sharing small details without exaggeration. Her family, too, seemed changed in subtle ways, speaking with new warmth about her gift. She continued to play as she always had, but there was a difference now. Every note carried the memory of that day, the realization that simple music, played sincerely, could leave an extraordinary impact. She began to think about the future, not in terms of fame or accolades, but in moments where her music could bring comfort, joy, or wonder to someone else. She imagined playing in different settings, small gatherings, quiet streets, or even in the homes of strangers. The possibilities were vast, but she understood that the essence of her music was always the same: sincerity, heart, and the courage to share herself, however softly, with the world in those quiet evenings. As she resumed her routine, practicing melodies in her room or humming softly while tending to daily chores, she felt a subtle shift within herself. The world seemed larger, more open, yet still intimate. She realized that performing was not an endpoint, but a beginning. The small event had revealed something essential. The extraordinary could emerge from the simplest things, the quietest moments, and the most genuine expressions of self. With that realization, she embraced her music more fully. Each day became an opportunity to explore new sounds, to listen more deeply to the world around her, and to consider how even the tiniest melody could reach far beyond herself. She knew that challenges would come, that fear and doubt would return, but she had felt once what it was like to connect through music. That feeling, that fleeting yet powerful connection, was enough to carry her forward into whatever came next. And so she continued quietly, courageously, and with a heart full of simple tunes, ready to create extraordinary weeks after her first, Public performances were filled with a quiet sense of excitement and curiosity. She continued her routine, practicing in her room, humming melodies softly, but there was a new spark inside her. The memory of the audience's reaction, the gentle applause, and the unspoken connection she had felt lingered in her mind. It had been a small event, but for her, it was monumental. She found herself thinking more about the ways her music could reach people, the ways it could speak where words failed. One morning, a local music teacher noticed her while walking through the park. He had seen her play before, standing under the shade of the old oak tree, lost in her melodies. Today, he stopped listening quietly as her fingers danced across the instrument. When she finished, he smiled warmly and said, "You have something special. Have you ever thought about performing for a larger audience?" She blushed slightly, shaking her head. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. But inside, she felt a stir of possibility. The thought of performing beyond the familiar streets of her town was thrilling. Even if it scared her, her friends, always encouraging, sensed her hesitation and gently nudged her forward. They reminded her of the showcase, the way people had listened and responded to her music. They told her that talent like hers was meant to be shared, not hidden away. She appreciated their support, though the fear of stepping beyond the comfort of her home and park was still strong. At the same time, a quiet excitement grew, a sense that something new was waiting for her, just beyond the familiar boundaries of her. Small World, a community festival, was announced for the end of the month. An event larger than any she had seen before. The town square would be filled with families, vendors, and musicians. The music teacher approached her again, offering guidance and reassurance. "It's a chance to share your music with more people. I'll be here to support you, but you have to decide if you want to try," he said. She spent long nights thinking about it, weighing the fear against the excitement. Her practice became more focused, exploring not only her melodies, but how she could connect more deeply with listeners. On the day of the festival, she felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety that made her stomach flutter. She carried her instrument carefully, as if it were a delicate treasure. The square was bustling with activity, children laughing, vendors calling out, people moving in every direction. She found a quiet corner backstage and began to play softly. The notes were tentative at first, testing the space, feeling for resonance. Slowly, the melody grew stronger, filling the area with a gentle, inviting presence. She noticed a few early arrivals pausing, listening, drawn by the familiar yet extraordinary sound. When her turn arrived, she walked onto the stage. Bright sunlight warming her face and the crowd stretching out before her. Hundreds of people were gathered, some sitting on benches, others standing in small groups. Her heart raced, but she took a deep breath, remembering the words of her friends and the music teacher. She reminded herself that this was not about perfection, but about sharing her heart through sound. As she placed her fingers on the strings and began the first notes, the initial nervousness transformed into focus. The music flowed naturally, like water finding its path. The audience listened quietly, their attention captured by the simplicity and sincerity of her playing. Children stopped running, vendors paused their work, and even strangers passing through the square turned to hear the tune. She felt the energy of the crowd without being overwhelmed by it. Her music had always been a personal refuge, but now it was a bridge, connecting her to others in a way she had never experienced. Each note carried a piece of her emotions, a subtle expression of joy, fear, hope, and longing. As she continued, she began to notice subtle reactions in the crowd. Some faces were serene, almost as if the music had unlocked memories or feelings long buried. Others were wide-eyed, captivated by the beauty and authenticity of the performance. A few people whispered to one another, commenting on the unexpected talent in such a young musician. She felt a sense of humility mixed with awe. She had never imagined that her simple tunes could have such an impact on so many people. Midway through her performance, she allowed herself to close her eyes, letting the music guide her. Her fingers moved with confidence, exploring gentle variations and delicate rhythms. She experimented with dynamics, letting some notes linger while others danced lightly. She discovered that the music could breathe, ebbing and flowing in ways that mirrored her own emotions, The connection with the audience deepened, a quiet dialogue between her heart and theirs. She felt a sense of unity, a shared experience that transcended words or appearances. The sun shifted in the sky, casting long shadows across the square, but she remained immersed in her performance. Occasionally, a soft breeze would stir, carrying her melodies across the space, touching ears and hearts alike. She noticed small gestures from the crowd, nods, smiles, closed eyes, subtle movements that showed they were not merely listening but feeling. Her music had become a living thing, interacting with the world around it. And she realized that this was what she had been striving for all along: connection, authenticity, and presence. As she approached the final section of her piece, she felt a surge of emotion. The notes she played were no longer just sounds. They were expressions of every quiet thought, every moment of doubt and courage, every secret dream she had held close. The audience seemed to respond instinctively, their attention unwavering, their presence a soft but powerful affirmation of her gift. She understood that the music had taken on a life of its own, carrying her and the listeners into a shared space of feeling and wonder. The final note resonated, hanging in the air like a gentle whisper. For a moment there was silence, a collective pause as if the entire square held its breath. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the crowd. It started as a few soft claps and grew into a steady, heartfelt recognition of the extraordinary moment they had just witnessed. She opened her eyes, overwhelmed by the sincerity of the response. Some people were standing, others clapped with tears in their eyes, and a few approached her with words of praise and gratitude. She felt a mixture of astonishment and quiet joy. Her music had reached beyond herself, touching hearts she would never have imagined. After stepping off the stage, she was met by the music teacher, who smiled warmly. "You've done something remarkable," he said. She could only nod, still processing the intensity of the experience. Her friends rushed forward, congratulating her, their eyes shining with pride. The sense of accomplishment was not about recognition, but about realizing that she had shared a piece of herself and that it had resonated deeply with others. She understood that the power of music was not in complexity or grandeur, but in authenticity and courage. That evening, walking home under a sky painted with the colors of sunset, she felt a quiet transformation within herself. The festival had been more than a performance. It had been a revelation. She recognized the potential of her music to create connection, to inspire, to comfort, and to uplift. The nervousness she had carried for weeks had been replaced by a sense of purpose and confidence. She knew that this was only the beginning, that there were many more moments to come, each with its own challenges and rewards. At home, she placed her instrument carefully in its corner, a companion that had carried her through another extraordinary experience. She replayed the performance in her mind, savoring the reactions, the energy, and the shared connection with the audience. She realized that her journey was not just about playing notes, but about embracing vulnerability, trusting her instincts, and allowing herself to be seen and heard through the music. Each melody she had created carried a story, a feeling, and a message that transcended the boundaries of her small town. In the days that followed, she continued to practice with renewed enthusiasm. She explored new melodies, experimented with variations, and allowed herself moments of reflection and improvisation. The memory of the festival lingered, not as a source of pressure or expectation, but as inspiration. She understood that true connection through music required honesty, courage, and a willingness to share the parts of herself that were most genuine and vulnerable. She also noticed subtle changes in how people interacted with her. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers seemed more attentive, more willing to pause and listen when she played. The small, quiet moments of recognition became a gentle affirmation that her music had meaning beyond her own heart. She felt a sense of responsibility, not as a burden, but as an opportunity to continue creating moments of beauty and connection. To share her gift with the world one note at a time as she settled into her daily routines. The excitement of the performance did not fade. Instead, it became a foundation for growth, a reminder that courage and sincerity could transform ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. She began to think more deeply about her music, not just as a personal passion, but as a language that could reach others in ways words sometimes could not. She understood that each performance, no matter how small, held the potential to leave a lasting impression. Her life returned to its familiar rhythm, yet she carried within her a new awareness of possibility. The simple tunes she played, once a private refuge, had become a bridge to the world, connecting hearts and minds in subtle but profound ways. She realized that the extraordinary was not a distant goal, but something that could emerge from the smallest, most authentic expressions of self. And so, she continued to play, each note a step toward new experiences, new connections. And the quiet discovery of her own power and potential, the day of the grand performance arrived quietly, like a gentle promise waiting to be fulfilled. She woke before dawn, the first light spilling softly into her room. Her instrument rested in its usual place, familiar and comforting, yet today it felt different, almost alive with anticipation. She touched it reverently, running her fingers across the strings and keys, feeling the textures she knew so well. Her heart was racing, a mix of excitement and nerves. But there was a calm underneath, a steady recognition that this moment had been coming. Shaped by months of practice, courage, and quiet determination, the venue was larger than any she had performed in before. The hall was filled with rows of chairs, bright stage lights, and an expectant hum of energy. People were arriving from nearby towns, their chatter and laughter filling the corridors. She could hear the faint strumming of other musicians tuning their instruments, the murmur of last-minute rehearsals. Backstage, she found a quiet corner, took a deep breath, and let her fingers wander over the instrument, softly exploring the tune she had played countless times in her room. It was a moment of grounding, a reminder that no matter the size of the crowd, the music remained hers, and she had the power to guide it. Her friends and the music teacher were nearby, offering quiet smiles and reassuring words. "Just play from your heart," her teacher whispered. "The rest will follow." She nodded, absorbing the advice. There was no pressure to perform perfectly, no expectation beyond honesty and sincerity. She had learned that true music came from vulnerability, from letting emotions flow through sound without worrying about judgment. That understanding gave her a deep sense of calm as the time for her performance approached. When her name was announced, a hush fell over the audience. She stepped onto the stage, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her. The bright lights made her squint slightly, but she welcomed the focus. The hall was silent, except for the faint rustle of movements and the soft murmur of anticipation. She positioned her instrument carefully, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, as if testing the space, finding the resonance between her music and the audience. As she continued, her confidence grew. Each note became clearer, each rhythm more deliberate. She allowed herself to close her eyes, to feel the music rather than think about it. The melody flowed naturally, shaped by months of quiet practice, introspection, and emotional exploration. The audience responded subtly at first, attentive glances, soft nods, children pausing in curiosity. The energy in the room shifted slowly, like sunlight breaking through clouds, a gentle warmth spreading through the listeners' hearts. Midway through her performance, something extraordinary happened. She played a simple sequence, one she had practiced countless times. Yet today it carried a depth and intensity she had never felt before. The notes seemed to float in the air, resonating with a quiet power that transcended the hall. Faces in the audience softened. Some closed their eyes, others leaned forward, rapt with attention. She could sense the connection, the invisible thread linking her heart to theirs. Each note became more than sound. It became a message, a bridge between souls. She felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of awe, humility, and joy. Realizing that her music had reached a place she could never have predicted, the hall remained silent except for the music. Yet the silence was alive, filled with anticipation and wonder. People were moved in ways they could not fully articulate. She noticed subtle signs, a hand resting on a heart, tears glistening in an eye, a smile forming on a face that seemed years older than the melody deserved. Her simple tune, the one she had feared, was too quiet, too delicate, had become extraordinary. It was a moment where her private passion intersected with a shared human experience, and she could feel the weight and beauty of it all. She allowed herself to explore the melody further, improvising gently, letting the music breathe and shift. The audience responded instinctively, leaning into the flow of her expression. She felt their energy as if it were an extension of her own, a conversation without words, a meeting of hearts. The notes she played were not just her own anymore. They belonged to the room, to the people who were listening, to the collective moment of awe and emotion that had emerged organically. Every touch of the strings, every gentle press of a key, became a catalyst for this shared experience. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. She lost track of the ordinary markers of minutes and hours, absorbed entirely in the music and the reactions it elicited. The extraordinary moment she had feared might never come had arrived not through preparation alone, but through the authenticity and openness she had cultivated over months of quiet dedication. She understood in a profound way that true impact came from honesty, from letting the simplest tune carry the weight of genuine feeling. The climax of her performance approached. She allowed the melody to swell, reaching heights and depths that mirrored her own emotions. Her fingers moved with confidence and grace, weaving a tapestry of sound that enveloped the audience. Some were leaning forward, some had tears quietly running down their cheeks. Others had their hands resting gently over their hearts. It was as if the music had created a safe space, a shared emotional landscape where strangers could feel together. The simplicity of the tune contrasted with the complexity of the feelings it evoked, and she marveled at how a few notes could create such an extraordinary moment. As she reached the final note, she let it linger in the air, a soft, resonant echo that seemed to settle over the hall. The silence that followed was almost sacred, a collective holding of breath, as if the audience did not want to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, hesitant at first, then building steadily into a wave of recognition and appreciation. It was not just polite clapping. It was heartfelt acknowledgement of the beauty and sincerity she had shared. Some stood, others wiped tears quietly, and a few approached her afterward to express their gratitude and wonder. Backstage, her music teacher enveloped her in a quiet hug, saying, "You've done something truly remarkable today." Her friends, eyes shining, congratulated her with warm smiles. The joy she felt was profound, but it was not the kind that came from pride or external validation. It was the joy of knowing that she had touched others, that her music had created a moment that would linger in their hearts long after the notes had faded. She realized that this was the essence of her gift, the ability to turn a simple tune into an extraordinary, shared experience. The rest of the day passed in a blur of congratulations, conversations, and gentle reflections. People continued to approach her, some strangers, some familiar faces, expressing how her performance had moved them. She listened quietly, absorbing their words and gestures, feeling a deep sense of connection that she had never experienced before. The music had become more than an expression of her own emotions. It had become a bridge between herself and the world, a testament to the power of authenticity, vulnerability, and courage. That evening, walking home under a sky painted with shades of orange and pink, she reflected on the day. She felt a quiet transformation within herself. The performance had been more than a showcase of skill. It had been a revelation, a moment where fear and hesitation gave way to courage and beauty. She understood that extraordinary moments did not always require grand gestures or elaborate compositions. Sometimes, the simplest tunes, played with sincerity and heart, could leave the deepest impression at home. She carefully placed her instrument in its usual corner, but it now felt different. It was a companion that had witnessed her growth, her courage, and the extraordinary connection she had created. She sat quietly, replaying the performance in her mind, savoring the faces, the emotions, and the unspoken communication that had occurred. She realized that music was not only a reflection of her own soul, but also a medium through which she could touch others in ways words often could not. In the days that followed, she continued to play with renewed inspiration. Every note carried the memory of the extraordinary moment she had shared, reminding her of the impact of authenticity and vulnerability. She explored new melodies, experimented with rhythms, and allowed herself moments of improvisation. Knowing that the heart of music lay in genuine expression rather than perfection, she became more attuned to the world around her. Listening deeply to the sounds of life, the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter of children, the subtle hum of the wind, and allowing them to inspire her creations. Her life continued with its familiar routines, but there was a subtle shift in how she perceived herself and her music. She no longer played solely for personal joy. She understood that her talent had the power to create moments of connection, comfort, and wonder. She began to imagine future performances, not for recognition or fame, but as opportunities to share the beauty of a simple tune that could leave people in awe. Each day became a canvas for new melodies, each moment a chance to explore the depth and potential of her gift. She also noticed the lasting effects of the extraordinary performance on those around her. Friends, family, and even strangers spoke of her music with admiration and gratitude. They seemed more attentive, more willing to pause and listen, as if her melodies had opened a small window into the beauty of shared human experience. She realized that the impact of her music extended beyond the notes themselves. It was the sincerity, the courage, and the heart she invested that created a lasting impression. In quiet moments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the private practice in her small room, to the community showcase, and now to the grand performance, each step had been a testament to patience, perseverance, and belief in herself. She understood that extraordinary moments were not always planned or forced. They emerged naturally when preparation, courage, and authenticity aligned. Her simple tune had become a vessel for